Wait, are you going to sleep there? While my brother and his wife were on a trip, I stayed at my brother's house with my niece. While happily talking about tomorrow's plans, my niece reached for the sliding door of the closet to go to bed. Despite my surprise, my niece slipped into the closet without hesitation. When I hurriedly grabbed her arm, she looked up at me curiously. I, Nadine, a 24-year-old housewife, have an older brother who is 5 years older than me. Having already lost our parents, we've always been close siblings and helped each other in our lives. That hadn't changed since we got married, and it was still a family affair. My husband's parents and I were close, but my parents-in-law lived far away. It was as far away as flying a plane, so it was not easy to rely on it. My brother and his wife got married, but my sister-in-law collided with her parents, and since then, the gap had not been bridged and she was completely insulated. For both parties, who had nowhere to turn to in their neighborhood, the current relationship was one that had no hesitation in holding on. In addition, a girl was born to my brother and his wife, and 4 years later, a girl was born in our family, and the relationship became closer. The daughters who lived in the same city grew up together like real sisters. As the years passed, my niece Dakota was about to turn 10 years old, and I heard from my brother that they were planning a trip to celebrate their 10th wedding anniversary. If the Nadines are convenient, can you take care of Dakota in the meantime? We are planning to stay nearby for 2 days and 1 night, but I thought it would be a good idea for the two of us to be together for the first time in a long time. My brother smiled a little happily, and I agreed with the quick answer that it was an easy task. Then, after a brief discussion about the date, when I asked what time I should pick up Dakota, my brother shook his head as if I didn't understand. Apparently, if Dakota stayed at my house, my brother's house was unattended and he was worried about crime prevention, so he wanted me to come and stay. I laughed that he was prone to worrying, but I was defeated by my brother, who insisted that it was better to be cautious, and decided to leave my daughter, who would still not be able to stay at another house, to my husband and go to stay at my brother's house, leaving them. After that, usual days passed, and on the day of the anniversary trip, I went to stay at my brother's house as planned. In order to reassure Dakota, who looked a little anxious when she saw her parents' backs, we held hands and saw off my brother and his wife. From now on, the two of us would start to stay home. At first, I thought that I would bring my daughter and have my husband pick me up only when she went to bed, but when I told her, Dakota said that she should never invite my daughter to this house, and I gave up because she showed an unusually stubborn refusal. Of course, I'd visited with my family before, so she couldn't tell me, but I guess there was a reason why she didn't want her to come that day. Dakota said that she really wanted to play with my daughter, but she shouldn't call her, but her eyes lit up when I promised to go to my house after breakfast tomorrow. For Dakota, who usually played with my daughter, on that day I had prepared a game with slightly more difficult rules and puzzles that adults could enjoy. As I quickly spread them out, I asked Dakota, who had recovered a little energy, what to play with. We spent time playing games and cooking dinner together. But Dakota was right next to me no matter what I was doing, and she was looking around nervously. At first, I wondered if she would be lonely without her parents, or if she would still be nervous, but that didn't change after a few hours. I asked Dakota if there was anything bothering her. But no matter how many times I asked, she said, "It's okay, nothing," and didn't tell me what she was worried about. Dakota's behavior was as if she was wary of something invisible. It wasn't until it was time for her to go to bed that I realized what it meant. Dakota, who changed into pajamas, opened the sliding door of the closet with a smile on her face, saying that she would go to bed early today and leave for my house tomorrow morning. There was a set of bedding prepared before you knew it. When I didn't understand what it meant, Dakota lay down on it quickly, said goodnight, and tried to close the sliding doors. "Wait, Dakota, are you going to sleep there?" I was surprised. My voice came out a little louder, but Dakota said with a serious face, "Yes, but it's okay. I'll leave it open just a little bit. As soon as I hear something, I'll wake up." I hid my confusion and invited Dakota to sleep with me that night. Then, after several invitations, Dakota finally hesitantly entered my blanket. Dakota asked if she could sleep in the same blanket because she wanted to keep the bedding in the closet as a hiding place, and I answered that it would be okay, but it only deepened the mystery. I asked why she needed a place to hide as bright as I could. After being reminded not to laugh, she quietly replied, "The devil is coming." This alone would have made me laugh because she was still in elementary school, but the story that followed was enough for me to believe in the existence of the devil. Dakota's shoulders shook and she clung to my arm. They say the devil is so scary and clever, and that's why the devil only comes on days when my dad isn't around. When the devil comes, I must never get out of the closet until my mom gets rid of the devil. My mom is always crying while she gets rid of the devil. I tried to help her once, but the devil hit the door of the closet and I was scared. I hugged the trembling Dakota and sighed inwardly. Perhaps this devil was real. It was probably a way to get a child to sleep at night. I was unexpectedly informed of my sister-in-law's affair and wondered what to do. If the devil was my sister-in-law's affair partner, he wouldn't come to this house. However, Dakota thought that the devil would come on a day when her dad was out. The proof of this was that she told me not to invite my daughter to the house on that day when my brother was away, and that she always kept her guard on the window and the front door by my side. When I thought about the feelings of Dakota and my brother who believed in his wife, I was angry at my sister-in-law, but now I wanted to reassure Dakota more than that, so I held her hand and smiled. "It's okay because you have me today." The devil is smart, isn't he? If so, there are people who don't know. I don't think they will come into the house because they are surprised. Also, your mom, who is always targeted by devils, is with your dad today. The devil can't get near them. Even so, Dakota, who did not know the identity of the devil, kept her face clouded with anxiety, and the more time passed, the more she began to be frightened by the devil's attack, fearing that it would come soon. I tried to calm her down when she said she was going to hide in the closet with me, and asked her to tell me anything that bothered her about the devil. This was because I thought that as I removed her anxiety one by one, Dakota would eventually become sleepy. However, when I heard more facts from Dakota, I ran out of the house with her in pajamas instead of putting her to bed. When I got in my car and hurried home, I told my husband about the situation and decided to have my husband and his friends go to my brother's house to stay overnight. Around 10 p.m. on the day when my husband headed to my brother's house, I received a call from my brother who was traveling to ask how Dakota was doing. "Has Dakota already fallen asleep?" "You, too, forget your husband and daughter once in a while and get some sleep. Please lock the door properly. Good night, then." When my brother heard how Dakota was doing, he finally said that I should go to bed, with the door locked. He insisted not to leave the house, and I did my best to keep my voice from trembling. After hanging up the phone, I looked at Dakota sleeping peacefully with my daughter and vowed to exorcise the devil. The next morning, my husband, who stayed overnight at my brother's house, came back. My body trembled with fear and anger at the sight of my husband telling me about last night's situation. I felt relieved that yesterday's decision was the right one, and then I spent the rest of the day at home with Dakota and my family, waiting for my brother and his wife to pick her up. As soon as my brother saw my face, he sternly reprimanded me for leaving the house at night. "Why didn't you sleep in the house over there? How many times have I asked you not to leave the house?" You replied that you understood, but what the hell are you thinking about going back to your own house without permission? My brother, who protested vehemently that I broke my promise, was filled with displeasure and coldly asked why my brother knew we weren't home while traveling. Then my brother replied, "Dakota has a smartphone with a GPS function," while not looking me in my eyes. If that were true, he wouldn't have told me not to leave the house in the phone call I received last night. It would have been easy to see that we were not at my brother's house by checking the GPS. I suppressed the urge to question my brother as soon as possible, and continued to speak quietly so that the children in the other room would not hear me. By the way, late last night, 2 men I didn't know came to my brother's house. Who are they, and what did they come to in the middle of the night when only me and Dakota were supposed to be there? Did suspicious persons come? I'm relieved you're all right. My brother's voice was trembling. But it wasn't fear that suspicious persons had come, nor was it relief that her daughter was safe. He seemed to choose his words carefully, and his gaze flew all over the place. "Hey, those guys." I further pursued my brother, who didn't answer clearly about the men who were supposed to be the devil. However, my sister-in-law's voice interrupted my voice. She didn't want to talk about it anymore, but my sister-in-law strongly called Dakota and said that she was going home. At the voice of her mother, Dakota, who was playing in another room, appeared, and my sister-in-law pulled her hand with obvious force. Then, my brother suddenly changed his attitude and started to push Dakota to leave the room, saying that he didn't forgive her for this time, but that they were going home. My brother and his wife, who tried to forcibly take Dakota, who did not want to go home, did not turn around to ignore me even if I held them back because the story was not over yet. When I saw Dakota reach out towards me as if to defy her parents, I hurriedly pulled her closer. "Hey, what are you doing?" My sister-in-law, who had suddenly let go of her daughter's hand, spoke up, but I kept Dakota behind me and kept her away from my brother and his wife. My brother and his wife spewed offensive words at us in an attempt to get their daughter back, and came towards us in anger. When my husband and I managed to kick them out of the room, the police officer who was waiting at the entrance instantly held my brother and his wife. A police officer called out to appease my brother and his wife, who were completely confused by the totally unexpected situation. My brother, who understood their situation, insisted that we should be arrested, saying to the police that they could not be returned to his daughter. My sister and her husband have taken my daughter out of the house and locked her up here. Please help Dakota quickly. It's not a case of holding me down. I'm not going to run or hide, so let me go. Dakota and my daughter, who came out after noticing the commotion, hid behind me, but she seemed to be scared, and the two of them were talking about how she wasn't trapped at all. I don't know if he heard it, but he told Dakota in a strong tone to come towards him. However, she was too scared of her dad's threatening attitude to be apart from me. My sister-in-law stood quietly next to the police officer, and she just looked at my brother as if she wanted to say something, and didn't even call Dakota. When my brother, who did not get his way and screamed at the entrance, was completely restrained by a police officer, my husband stuck his smartphone in front of him. Noticing this, I told Dakota and my daughter to wait in the room again, and closed the door so that they couldn't hear the audio. My husband, who confirmed it, began to play the video taken at his brother's house last night without saying a word, and the faces of my brother and his wife immediately turned pale when they saw it. At the beginning of the video, the key to the house was slowly turning, and two men who seemed to have used the key entered the room quietly. The men, who were in a good mood from the appearance, greeted them while giving their brother's name, wondering if there was a previous customer. "Hey, how much did you pay?" He told me that I can get 30% discounts because the woman would be his sister. With a smirk on his face, he looked at my husband. When my husband's friend avoided clarification and gave a false reply, he proudly told me that they were on good terms with my brother and his wife, and that he was able to get a discount from there, even the specific amount. He continued, "We're lucky to be able to play with a child today," and the man's profile was so ugly that it was rude to call him a devil. I couldn't see the screen, but just listening to the audio gave me goosebumps. After that, my husband's friend asked if he often came to this house or if he always came with two people. Then they seemed to realize that something was wrong, and they asked where me and Dakota were. And when he saw my husband with an angry expression on his face, he finally realized the situation. Knowing that it was not their friends who were here, the men fled in a panic. Until the end, they either didn't notice my husband's recording, or they didn't tell him on purpose. My brother, who was supposed to be close to them, seemed to be the first to know about the existence of the video and was trembling. The pale brother was desperate and said that he didn't know anything and that he had been trapped. Until I saw this video, I thought that my brother had nothing to do with it, and that it was all planned by my sister-in-law. However, there was testimony in the video that my brother offered me and Dakota. No one was convinced, and my brother was taken away by a police officer. My sister-in-law was also suspicious that she had nothing to do with it, but the police officer who had heard Dakota's testimony in advance asked her to accompany him because he had something he wanted to ask, and the couple were to be taken care of. Later, during a police interrogation, my brother and sister-in-law were forced to confess everything and were arrested as they were. My sister-in-law seemed to have lured men to her home on the day of the night shift and received money. Knowing that there was a demand for children for a specific group, my sister-in-law used Dakota with great care so as not to get caught by the law. In order to help her mother, who was being bullied by the devil, Dakota, who knew nothing, was photographed posing as she was told. It was just a picture of a child that didn't have any sexual associations. It seemed that my sister-in-law took such a simple photo with a disposable camera, developed it, and showed it to her customers, as if it were an auction. Moreover, she only rented out the photographs and never sold them. I despised it from the bottom of my heart, but it should have ended up being a story that had nothing to do with the two of us. When my brother noticed his wife's business, he began to gather men who would become customers, rather than taunting his wife or protecting his daughter. More employees meant more sales. With a simple idea, my brother decided to involve me in the business. However, there was no way that even if he talked to me normally, I would say okay. So my brother came up with the idea of forcing me to work and continuously threatening me by taking pictures of the scene. My brothers took their time to deliberately choose a day when there were no neighbors and locked me and Dakota in the home. After that, they exchanged the keys to their home for a large sum of money and went on a sleepover trip to prove that they had nothing to do with it. What was a miscalculation for my brothers was that Dakota, who had been absolutely obedient to my sister-in-law's remarks, would have told me about the devil in order to protect me. Dakota didn't know much about the story that was going on in the house, but she knew that the devil was coming after them. And when she told me that, the hellish environment of my brother's house came to light. That night, when I knew about Dakota's situation, I asked my husband to take a picture of the devil. They were so dismissive of information that when I called the police, they acted immediately. At the same time, we also reported to the juvenile detention center to ensure that Dakota was protected. By telling the police officers that my brother and his wife were coming to our house and having them take custody, we were finally able to protect Dakota from them. My brother and his wife, who were arrested on charges such as violating the Child Welfare Act, the Prostitution Prevention Act, and a lot of charges, did not escape prison sentences even though they were first-time offenders. In particular, photographs of children taken over several years were considered to be highly malicious. Once an image was leaked to the internet, it could not be erased for the rest of its life. I was terrified when the police told me so, but fortunately the leak was prevented by the fact that my sister-in-law did not convert Dakota's photos into data and kept them strictly without selling them. I don't know how my brother, who was kind and dependable to me, turned into a person who could do such terrible things. I'm horrified that we had been helping each other normally before, but I didn't notice how distorted it was. In any case, I want him to face up to what he has done. The devils, who were also interviewed by the police after the arrest of my brothers, pretended that they were not guilty because it was an attempt, but it seemed that they were also arrested for multiple crimes because a photo of someone's child was found in their home, and it seemed that some of the other crimes that my brother and his wife talked about in the interrogation were involved. After defeating the devils and their friends lurking around us, we asked the juvenile detention center what would happen to Dakota. Both parents were arrested, so there was no one to take care of her. In the first place, the two of them were disqualified as guardians, so Dakota was given protection from them. That was fine, but my brother and I don't have parents, and my sister-in-law's parents were insulated. From then, I heard they contacted my sister-in-law's parents' house, and if there was no one to accept her, she would go to a nursing home. After much consultation with my husband, I decided to adopt Dakota. I didn't want to part with Dakota, who was also a benefactor to me and whom I love like a real daughter. Fortunately, my husband approved, and we decided to take this opportunity to move to the region where my parents-in-law live. My daughter was excited to see my parents-in-law who she likes, and she was overjoyed that her dream had come true when her favorite Dakota came to her where she had always said she wanted a sister. And Dakota, who has finally been freed from my brother and his wife, has already begun to get used to her new environment as an elder sister and has begun to live a happy and peaceful life.